Hi, so we've reached 1,000 subscribers. So it's like we've got a nice little community here now. Thank you very much. And I said when we hit 1,000 subscribers, I would go through a few videos to give something back to the Brexiteers because there's an awful lot of statements they keep coming out with in terms of the advantages in Brexit as they see it, or at the very least the disadvantage of being in the EU, or the fact that we don't need the EU. And so, I'm going to address those now. I'm going to do a few at a time because I don't want to do all of them in one lot because, attention span. So I'll do a few, but then I'm going to put a bonus at the end. This is something you Brexiteers can use to actually use in arguments. That'd be great for you, wouldn't it? Actually having something that would be true. So the first one of the most common questions is, so if leaving the EU would be a disaster, why were we doing so well before we joined? This is a really easy question to answer. We weren't. We were doing really badly. I think where this goes wrong is people are aware that we've sort of been doing well recently, and they remember that before we joined the EU, or the EEC as it was at the time, we had the British Empire. We owned like 2/3 of the world. That was brilliant. We were doing amazing then. What they forget about was that there was a period of time between those two events. And specifically in the period of time between the EEC forming and us joining, we were doing disastrously badly for a couple of reasons. A lot of our industry was very uncompetitive, very lazy, not very innovative. But the other thing is that the fact that the EEC was working so well and we were on the outside of it. One of the big reasons we were doing so badly is because we were not in the EEC. So it's a comparative thing. Our economy was growing over this period of time, but the problem was it was growing by about 50% of the growth of leading nations such as France, West Germany as it was at the time, and Italy. And this was meaning that we were getting further and further behind in terms of the economy. We were known as the poor man of Europe. We were the beggar nation of Europe. We weren't doing well. We were doing disastrously. This chart from Financial Times sort of shows this. And what's really interesting on this, it doesn't just show us lagging very badly behind. What you can see here is our economy at the time as compared to the averages of the economies of West Germany, France and Italy, the leading economies at the time within that European community. And what you can see very, very clearly is when we joined, we immediately started going up. Our GDP started increasing. Our growth started to very rapidly catch up with those European powerhouses. And then we overtook it. Because yes, as people will know, there's a lot to be proud about with British industry. Yes, certain industries have sort of fallen by the wayside, but other ones have taken off as well. But we needed that community to be able to make it work. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It's right there. Our economy was woeful before we joined. As soon as we joined, this wasn't years later, as soon as we joined, it took off and overtook those. And another thing that was pointed out quite recently as well with regards to Brexit, because another little side issue is people keep saying, oh, well, what about all these predictions of doom and gloom? Our economy's been all right since the vote. There's two aspects of that. First of all, we haven't left the EU yet. So at the moment, nothing has tangibly changed. However, it's also not true. We were, as was pointed out very recently, the fastest growing economy in the EU just before the referendum vote. We are now pretty much bottom. Our economy has not been doing well. And I think another thing that sometimes causes a bit of confusion here, people sometimes think if they're okay, then the country's okay. Maybe, for example, people think that the country was doing okay before we joined the EEC because they were doing okay or their granddad was doing okay. Well, I'm sorry, but your granddad doing okay is not a measure for the country. The country was not, just as it is now. There's plenty of people in this country that will tell you they are not doing okay compared to a couple of years ago. The government can fiddle employment figures. They can do things like, for example, to keep people off the unemployment, make it look like it's going down. They can say things like, oh, you people that have being signed off as a doctor is saying you're not fit for work yet, you've got to sort these two things. Make them go to a meeting where someone who has no medical qualifications and tells them to pick up a pound coin. Oh, you can pick up a pound coin. You can work. All of a sudden, they don't get those benefits. Or sanctioning people when they've done nothing wrong. Again, just to get them off the unemployment figures. Or getting people that aren't paid anything, but they've got a 0 hours contract, even though they're getting 0 hours. Oh, well, they're coming off the unemployment figures as well. But what you can't hide is the country's GDP. What you can't hide is how productive the country is being. Those are official statistics. Statistics you get from the government or that the government determine or define, they can be fiddled. Statistics from, say, the Office for National Statistics, no. So that's an easy one. Second one is how did we trade successfully before? So one of the things I've been talking about is the fact that we are really going to struggle to get trade deals. We're certainly not going to get beneficial trade deals. The best that the government can hope, whichever government is in power, is that they get a crap trade deal but somehow convinces it's a great trade deal. But we have no chance of getting a great trade deal. And so this question, how did we trade successfully before? Well, see, what we used to do, right, this was our technique. We used to get a load of battleships and blockade ports, and then we'd send the army in and force them to open up those ports to trade with us in terms that benefited us. And if they didn't like that very much, we used to nick their country. Yeah, you're not allowed to do that anymore. So what we're actually going to be in a situation of is the other thing as well, actually, to bear in mind is at the time, the EEC was a really powerful experiment. Since then, a lot of other regions have developed their own trading blocks, very protectionist trading blocks. After all, why would you join a trading block with other countries if you weren't going to get beneficial treatment? So that's what it's all about. So now we're going to try and trade with countries that are in their own trading block, including the EU, but also in the Americas, in Asia, elsewhere. And we're going to try and get beneficial treatment ourselves without being a part of that block? No, because that's not how it works. Because the other countries in that block are going to say, no, you're not going to trade with them on beneficial terms. We're your buddies. We're your homies. You're part of our block. It's not going to happen. That's the reason. We're out on our own. Who we're going to trade with? No one that's going to give us a good deal. It's simple, really. Third one is a cracker. I like this one. So it's lots of comments like this. Oh, you're just Project Fear, or you're just a remoaner. That's really good. I like that. I like that. The thing is, though, I keep seeing lots of people saying the same thing. I'm thinking that's strange. That lots of people, all independently thinking, always come up with the same two phrases. Actually, now that I think about it, I've heard those phrases before. Yeah, like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson, they use those phrases. But that's really confusing because then it's like you're not capable of expressing yourself in your own words. You've got to use someone else's words. But that's odd because if you can't express yourself in your own words, it's almost like you can't think for yourself. So you're using someone else's thoughts. Odd. But anyway, I'm sure that's all you can take in for now. There'll be another one, but there's a bonus. I did promise a bonus. Now, here's the thing. When you come out with the usual Project Theory moaner, great, thank you very much. The problem is that you just come across as a bit dumb because when you're trying to have a debate, if you don't actually tackle the points, if you can't actually come up with a benefit for Brexit that isn't fantasy, that's actually real, you just come across as a bit silly. Now, I don't want you to come across as silly. I really don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a benefit of Brexit. Because only a fool would say there's no benefit to Brexit. There are benefits in any tragedy. In fact, the most inspired people, the people who are real winners in life, are the ones who can identify opportunities in disaster. Here is one. At the moment, we have a massive skill shortage. The Chamber of Commerce is crying out, saying that our businesses are stymied because they cannot get the skills in this country that's not existing. And now we're struggling to get those skills from abroad as well. The NHS is a big one, but there's lots of industries, engineering firms, for example, that just cannot find the people with the skills they need to expand. So they're stagnating. Now, that doesn't sound like a great thing, but it can be. It can be. Because here's the thing. We, for too long, have been a little bit like the Premier League, like Premier League clubs. A lot of Premier League club fans will note that quite a lot of their players are from overseas. There's not many, especially in the top teams, not that many British-born, or British-raised at the very least, players. And the reason for this is because traditionally, it might be improving now, traditionally we haven't been that great at teaching them the skills. But there's other countries that do. So, and because the Premier League's so rich, we just buy that talent in. We've been doing the same thing in industry. We haven't really been training people. In fact, the funding for training people in useful skills has been slashed and slashed over several years, over the last 9 years especially. It's been like a forest fire. If our industry needs certain skills and we don't have them, and we can't get them in from abroad, either because, especially in the EU, they don't feel safe here because we haven't got an official deal, or worse still, because people still get it into their heads that migration is a problem when we actually don't have enough immigration to cover these skills. But if the government keeps carrying on with its threats of curbing immigration, which is what they always say, they never actually do it because they know better. But they always say they will. One day, maybe they will. And then we're really struggling. So we need to get those skills in this country. So how do we do that? First of all, we need to encourage people to go into careers that we need. So we need more doctors and nurses. We need more engineers. These are the things we desperately need in this country. So there'd be campaigns run to encourage more people to go into these careers. Not going off to university and studying something useless like media studies or sociology. We don't need a lot of them. A few of them, fine, yeah, but not a lot of them. Doctors, nurses, engineers. Okay. Then what we do is the government funds those courses at colleges. So they've been slashing the funding for these courses in actual fact in the last few years. I know as a teacher in a college, the funding for all of these things, training these sort of people has been slashed like you wouldn't believe. So we're actually discouraging people in this country from entering those careers. And finally, what you would do is you would keep training people. You would fund training people throughout their lives. That way, if a particular town, like the town I'm living in, Scunthorpe, is dependent on a particular industry, the steel industry in our case, that puts you in a vulnerable position. But keeping funding, keeping people's skills up, teaching them new skills as industry modernisers and modernisers, funding that will mean that you don't necessarily depend upon one industry, that you've got the skills to move into a different industry if necessary as well, or a related industry that's actually blossoming. There's your silver lining. It could force the government to realise we've got a skills gap, that we can't just buy in from outside, force us to train our own people, and actually British people can then start to climb the skills ladder, something that even though our economy is forged ahead, our skills progress has fallen sadly behind. There you go. Free bonus for you that you can actually use in an argument about Brexit. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. Thanks again for the 1,000 subs. It's very nice. Share with other people who might also be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later. But also, I've got a few more of these to go through. But if you can think of any, put them in the comments below and I'll try and get around to them.